I would also agree that every human alive in the, let's say, 60 to 90 years, depending on the time in history that they're alive, they would argue that they were living in unprecedented times too. I am just thankful that in our unprecedented times, we have an outlet to share information that's completely removed from the government and the major news corporations. That's a huge blessing.
You're listening to the Art and War podcast with your hosts, Mitch and Nathan. Mitch is a former airborne infantry squad leader who now spends most of his time coaching soccer. Nathan is a professional illustrator and an avid shooter with a couple of years of Canadian military experience. Together, they run the Seaburn Art page. Enjoy the show.
Start with asking you about is you grew up in Portland, right?
I did, yeah. My whole life, moving to Tennessee was not on the radar at all. I mean, my wife and I and our parents had been talking about, trying to get out of Oregon, and everyone in the Pacific Northwest was talking about Idaho. Let's go to Boise. Let's go check that out. And there's so many people moving, even Californians and people from Washington, and we quickly saw that Idaho was starting. It's, who knows, maybe 5-10 years away from shifting blue. I hope not, but that's not really where I want to be raising my kids, future kids, I should say. And then totally, how did it start? Oh, I called Drew, just checking in, just haven't talked to you for a while. What's been going on? And he randomly was like, in the middle of the conversation, oh, hey, by the way, Josh, would you ever consider coming out to Tennessee? And I 100% thought that the question was, do you want to come shoot? Like, do you just want to come out for the weekend? And I was like, dude, I'd love that. That sounds great. Yeah, absolutely. And then the phone call ended and Drew started texting me a few more questions. And then it got to the job resume. And I was like, oh, hold on. You're asking about like me coming out to work there? And he was like, yeah, dude, that's what I meant. Huh. I was like, oh, wow. Well, let's move forward and see what happens. So, my whole life in Portland, and this Tennessee move was totally unforeseen.
But you grew up in Portland though, and how did you end up meeting Drew? Like, why was it just like, hey, I'm going to call my old friend and see what's going on?
Yeah, well, let's see. I have been doing the Instagram thing for, I don't know, I guess long enough that back in the day you could post stupid videos and people would follow you. And that was plenty enough for him and I to connect. And then they went out to a Loophole range, and they were shooting there, and Drew hit me up and was like, hey, you're fairly close. You're like 2 hours away. Do you want to come out to the Loophole range? And I've been good buddies with, I was probably biking distance from the Loophole headquarters and had been friends with people over there for a while. And so I had connections there too. I went out and shot with T.REX back in, it was probably like 2017. And we've just kind of stayed in touch from them through social media.
So it was just very much you were on Instagram, social media, doing stuff and having those connections to Leopold, and then eventually over at T.REX Arms. That's really kind of what spawned this whole thing that you got going on now.
Yeah, pretty much. Meeting people through social media was not really one of the goals when it all kicked off, but I pretty quickly figured out how many cool people you can find and build friendships with. And then, a big part of the goal with the current industry, is changing culture. And when you find other people that have like-minded interests in changing gun culture, progressing forward into, phase 1, 2, and 3, you could call it. It's fun to work with those people and bounce off of them, even if you're on the West Coast and they're in, middle Tennessee. So that was a strange connection, but pretty cool to start meeting those T.REX guys back in the day.
If you don't mind me asking, because I'm sure it's on everyone's mind, including mine, how terrible, in your words, is Portland?
So I'll start by saying I lived there my whole life. I was very close to Nike in Beaverton, Oregon, and that was, 20 minutes from Portland when you're in the suburbs, and all the homes are fairly nice, gated communities. you don't tend to notice much. But over the past couple of years going downtown, uh, it's it's frightening. It's shocking how bad it's gotten. And the 2020 riots really gave a good representation of how imbalanced that city is. And the sad thing is, there are enough people in Portland that they run the entire state. So there's a lot of rural areas. There's a lot of farmers. There's a lot of people that just came out and still want to be cowboys, but they just don't have a say because there's so many people in Portland. And really, when I concluded this is so bad, I cannot wait to get out, is when in 2020, my wife is a commercial property manager, and she was managing a skyrise building, with a hotel and a restaurant and a Starbucks on the bottom floor, and there was a bar, and Amazon had some floors, and a bank had a couple floors. And she would get calls at 3 in the morning from someone in the hotel, or one of the managers of the hotel, and say, "We just had a brick come through the restaurant window." Well, what is she supposed to do? I mean, call 911. The cops aren't coming. They're more worried about protecting the police station. So the next morning, she would want to drive down there, and I'd be like, "That's possible. We have two sets of plates, or we got body armor. We're going to throw it in the car, and I'm going to drive you down there." And at the time, COVID was going on, obviously, and so I was able to work from home on a computer, and I was like, I'm ready to roll pretty much at any minute. And just going through that motion for 9 months in Portland, concluded, like, yeah, no, I'm not raising kids here. I'm not doing the rest of my life like this. So when you when you grow up in Portland, and it's the frog that has the its water temperature slowly rising to a boil, you don't notice it. Finally, it reached a boil, and it's like, yeah, no, can't do this anymore. I'm done.
Yeah.
So how bad is Portland? Really bad. I mean, especially now they've legalized certain amounts of meth. If you have a certain amount of it, they're not allowed to arrest you. They're just not going to. So it's bad. It's really bad.
It very much sounds like where I'm from in New York, where a large majority of the state is very rural, farmers, um, just kind of minding their business, small communities, small towns. But the one major city, being New York City, runs the entire state, and it leaves everybody else without a say. It sounds very similar to that. And was it kind of always like how it is now growing up, and we're just kind of hearing about it, or is it a slow gradual decline into whatever it is now?
That's a good question. I mean, I remember biking on 10-mile bike rides with my family to go get ice cream in downtown Portland. And maybe I wasn't old enough when I was 12 to really notice it. But over the past 10 years, I've continually seen it's not just a tarp under a bridge and there's people living there. It's tent cities. And it caught on fire and the whole tent city is burning, and now it's, there's flames coming up under the bridge. So I remember when it was really good and there were a few tarps and people were sleeping under the tarps. But the past 10 years, just the politics, and legalizing a variety of drugs, a variety of living on the street, all that stuff. It has gotten very bad very quickly. So it's changed slowly over the past 10 years, but it's gotten far worse than, well, really any city should ever see, at least in the States.
Yeah, this is the time where I'm going to complain about Canada. I understand that feeling intimately. This country is basically run by like three major cities, and we don't really have that separation. My city's seen basically the same kind of thing as tent cities popping up everywhere. Crime has drastically increased, I think, basically everywhere. And the major cities they dictate the politics of the entire country. And you can make the same arguments for New York. Rural upstate New York is basically ruled by the city, and it's terrible. The policies trickling down there are awful. Same with California; it's basically run by LA and San Francisco. It's I don't like it. I really don't like it. Sorry, Mitch. Go ahead.
What do you think the solution? Because I think this is happening all across America in these
Yeah.
primarily Democrat-run cities where all of these things, they're bringing in all of this tax revenue more than anywhere else in the country, and yet they're not doing anything relevant to making the city a livable place. You have homeless people everywhere, you have violent crime. What do you think the solution to turn all of that around would be?
Yeah. I mean, I have a fear of people who see the world in polar opposites, choosing to just completely live in different parts of the country. That starts to create animosity between people when you are living shoulder to shoulder with other people that have a different view on life in general. Um, it's the whole what's that test that someone did about if there's a mirror behind a counter when you're buying coffee and people can see themselves, they're less prone to be disrespectful to the person who's serving them coffee. Well,
Oh, that's fascinating. Sorry, go on.
so I mean that starts to apply when you live 100% of your life, let's say in Portland, and pretty much everyone else, if they were to find out that you had a gun, would freak out, and they wouldn't know what to do. They'd start wondering if they had to call the cops. They would be terrified. As you start doing life with those people, you comprehend they just don't know what they're talking about. They have no experience with firearms. They don't know why I have a gun. They can't comprehend it. Now, if someone else lives in a different state and they don't know anyone personally that is anti-gun, just picking one political argument, as soon as they come across someone like that, they probably don't know how to react, or how to handle that situation. So my point is, I have a fear of, and I did this, but leaving a state just because you don't like the politics. Now, that's what I did, and I also comprehend that you can't do life with people who want to turn your world into communism. You know, you can't do that. So I don't want a civil war in any way, but I want the best for America. I want the best, for all of Western culture, let alone the whole world. And we're going to have to learn how to communicate our differences and be peaceful about it as long as we can. What's the answer? I'm not sure, but there's going to be a fine line between everyone get out and stop paying taxes to these people who are being, they're creating dictatorships. And on the other side, there can be a concern about 10 years down the road, this is a red state or this is a blue state. There's problems in that too.
Yeah, this is very much a belief that has evolved for me as I've kind of grown up and seen more of the country and seen more of the world. As a young man, when I looked at, Afghanistan or Syria or any of those countries, it was very much like, yeah, we have to absolutely bomb and kill all those people over there. And yeah, there's innocent people, but they should just leave, or they should fight for their own country. And as I grew up and as I saw the state of a lot of different countries firsthand, I realized it is very much not that simple. There are a lot of
Mhm.
things in place that not only prevent people from leaving, they are very prideful, not to their country, but to their village, to their town, to their family. And it becomes, yeah, I guess the whole country is kind of going to shit over here in like Syria, but my village is still here. My family is still here. My friends are still here. Until it comes to my village, I'm not doing anything about it. And
Well, right. And I mean, it's the whole concern about if America starts to get bad, there are people that hold the conversation, where are you going to go if America starts to fall apart? I'm not going anywhere, you know? And I don't want to say that I ran from Portland. Um, in a way, I did. Uh, but what I hope for, and I don't necessarily plan on going back to Oregon anytime soon, moving back there, I should say, but um, I would love to have the opportunity to go back there. Maybe I'm 60 and retire there or something like that, because it's a beautiful state. But if it's not going to change, I don't know that I could see myself going back. But who's going to be there to fight for it? It's a rough balance. There's individual answers for individual people. You can't cut and paste for everybody.
it's a very complicated question because you want, I mean, myself, there's times where I'm like, man, I could go back to New York and do my best to be that person that is trying to actively stop all of the terrible things that New York City is pushing on the rest of the state, because I mean, New York is beautiful. I love it. I was
Mm-hmm.
actually when I was visiting Tennessee, I was like, wow, like this is so much like New York, except the laws aren't nearly as bad. Like it's humid. There's a ton of woods. There's rolling hills. It's gorgeous, and I love it. Uh, but there's another part of me that knows it's not. It's very much not my fight to make.
Mm-hmm.
I've been gone for so long, and even if I hadn't been, I don't know if me, even with, let's say I had the support of all of upstate New York, could do anything about it. And I think that is the problem a lot of people face. They have the choice and the ability to leave, and they feel like they are unable to stay and make a difference for the better.
Mm-hmm.
It's very much a hopeless situation. Do you kind of think that America, as we know it and as we've known it growing up, is kind of starting to crumble and starting to collapse?
Mm, I wouldn't say that. We've seen situations. Well, I guess I'd say every generation has their battle, and that pertains to culture and that pertains to politics. Um, here as Americans in 2022, we can look back on history and see there were a lot of really terrible times with distrust in our political leaders, and look at Watergate, look at Herbert Hoover, look at the Great Depression, and there have always been times when we don't know where we're moving forward to or how to get out of a certain situation. Um, but there have absolutely been times like this in history, and no nation, I don't believe any nation is going to last forever. But I don't think that this is anything, at least, I don't think we're nearing the end. I think we're going through some rocky terrain. Um, but, just like we're still a very young country. Let me put it this way, any relationship, whether it's a marriage or two brothers growing up together, times of conflict can also lead to times of ultimate strength. Because there is conflict, people learn, you know what, maybe we didn't handle that the best, or those people over there did a really good job of solving that problem. We just learned how to resolve those issues. And we may be going through a time like that. And I view that, I hope to continue to view that as a blessing. Now, the only way that it becomes a blessing and strength coming out of it is if we have our eyes open and learn from scenarios like this, as opposed to just having your eyes shut, hoping it all goes away, and buy a bunch of ammo and guns. That's one way to go about it. But the other way is to learn, communicate with people on both sides of the fence, talk about the problems, and start talking, start communicating about what's going on. Um, and then, hopefully, ultimately, that leads to some real strength in the nation. I just think it's a rocky time at the moment.
Hey, this is Mitchell with Sieber and Art. Did you know that we have a Patreon? We do have a Patreon, and there's a ton of cool things there. Super cool things, and Nathan's going to tell you about them.
Hey guys, Nathan here from the Art and War podcast, here to tell you about Patreon. There's a 24-hour Korean massage parlor several blocks from my house, and I go there for happy endings. It gets pretty expensive, and I need you to donate me money so I can continue to serve my dark addiction.
Not only can you help Nathan get hand jobs from Koreans, you can also help us continue to improve the quality of content that we do. You get merch now after a couple months of being a Patreon subscriber, which is cool. We also have stickers, and we also have high-res downloadable targets that you can download, send to Staples, and get weird looks when you print them out to bring them to your range and shoot. Also, all of our guides are downloadable, high res, so if you want to print them out and make a cool little book, yeah, you can go for that too.
You can find our Patreon via the link in this episode's description or in the Sieber and Art page's bio on Instagram. Now let's get back to the show.
Hey guys, it's Nathan again, the penal colony leper half of Sieber and Art. Just come to talk to you about our newest sponsor, Midwest Armor. Midwest Armor supplied us with a couple of plate carriers. The Leap plate carrier, kind of reminiscent of the 6094 LBD carrier or the Cry JPC. They're pretty cool, and I gotta say I'm really enjoying mine, and gotta give my tacit recommendation as a decent plate carrier that can actually hold things and do what you need it to. It holds its own. Anyways, Midwest Armor, they've got plate carriers including some slick variants and some more overt stuff. They've got armor too. Check them out.
Yeah, I think it is very much I think it's very much exaggerated on both sides. A lot of people believe that because we are so divided, that it is inevitable that it collapses. And the opposite side of that is, while we are so divided, each side is very strongly unified. And
Very strongly which, sorry?
each side is very strongly unified. So, you have that one side of the culture. I mean, there's many different sides, but if you had to divide it into two, it would primarily be, the Democrat Republican side. And it is very much, both sides are very, very united, which increases the divide between the two.
Right.
But it shows that at least, if you want to look at a positive in this chaotic time that we're living in, like you said, we're a young nation. We've gone through chaotic times before. I think this is just a unique one where not only is it chaotic, but you're adding social media and a new means of communicating for humans into the mix. Nathan, you had something to say?
If I may say, something I've kind of been thinking about is we live in an unprecedented enough time by the fact that social media has, before, and I may have brought this up before, say 2001, 2002, 2003, the start of the War on Terror, early GWAT, all of that, all of our news, everything came from the government and corporations. Everything was basically like spoon-fed to us on CNN and Fox and, NBC and all of that. Now we are in an age of like the mass dissemination of media, and the distrust in the government has never been lower. There's so many ways to get information that are just really out there, and that's great. I think it's wonderful. I truly do. But I don't really have any predictions on how it's going to go. I would like to say I'm optimistic, and I do think there's a lot of unity between, the proverbial right and the left, if we're going to stick inside that binary. But what I'm seeing is a worrying raise of violent rhetoric from the furthest sides of both, especially, God, I mean, Mitch and I, we bring it up a lot. Who was that guy who said they were going to put us against the wall?
Oh, those Antifa people that said they were gonna, if we don't give up the means of production for our page, i.e.
Absolutely.
Nathan, they're gonna put us against the wall.
Yeah. And even right now, we've got these protests going on in Canada, and I'm seeing the rhetoric get increasingly violent. Just, hey, yeah, we should have the military come in and kill them. And again, these are the the fringe voices, and they'll always be there. But I'm seeing it worryingly bleed into people I otherwise thought were quite normal. And
Mhm.
I don't have any prediction. I don't think that America's crumbling. I don't think that, but I do see a worrying increase in just the willingness of people to commit violence for the sake of politics, especially within kind of those demographics. Like, oh, let's get the military to do this. Let's get police to do this. Let's yeah, I guess that's my rant for for right now.
Yeah, I mean it's concerning, and it leads to. I mean, I always go back to the industry that I work in.
Yeah.
uh, so that I mean that leads to questions like, well, do you think Antifa should have guns?
And that is a question that you know what, I'm fine with talking about it with you too. We were going to talk about this topic with Lucas. It is
Oh, that
very,
was a question for us. I thought he was.
oh,
I thought you were
oh,
leading
well, I
somewhere.
have,
No, I mean it's a statement, but it's worth talking about, and that's one of those things that if once you're in the industry long enough, if you ask enough questions, it leads to okay, if you're a Second Amendment absolutist,
Yes.
does the enemy, as one may call it, the other side, politically, or maybe people who live a couple, houses down in your neighborhood, are you okay with them having firearms too? And that adds a little bit of depth to
Yeah.
the Second Amendment, absolutely. And I would argue yes, for various reasons. But as soon as those conversations start to happen, those are some deeper conversations.
Yeah.
That is when people's eyes start to be open to, wait a minute, hold on. You're not just saying I want to have all the guns. You're saying everyone should have access to these things. That changes the dimension of the argument that we've seen over the past, well, gosh, since the Second Amendment was written. I don't know that we've done a really good job of stating, hey, I'm not just advocating for myself, I'm advocating for literally everybody.
and I couldn't agree more. I think
Yeah.
it is increasingly important that if you do believe in the Second Amendment, that you also have to recognize that that means not restricting the people you disagree with. And a lot of people, oh, so you just want Antifa to have guns so that they can come over and they can kill you and your family? No, that's not what I want. But I'm saying the precedence that it sets when you say everybody can have guns except for these people because whatever reason, that is when you start to see all of these weird little laws getting put in where it targets certain communities, but then it is like, oh, it's okay if we target these communities, so it's okay if we restrict these other people. And the precedence that it sets when you start restricting firearms, as we've seen as our country has gone along and progressively restricted more and more, it's a very dangerous precedence.
I agree. Honestly, I was about to say that any rules, and I try and look at any laws that are made. But an example comes to the early 2000s Tony Blair law in England about possessing terroristic materials, and now here we are, almost 20 years later, perhaps more than 20 years later. I can't remember exactly when that law was penned, and someone just got arrested for having a book and charged under that law and put in jail for 5 years. Always assume any law, regardless of the intentions, will be used by the other side to restrict your rights as well. And that isn't, once you start saying, all right, well, you don't have this right because of your particular views, that's exactly the sort of like bullshit justifications that it will eventually be used on you. So yeah, I would make the exact same argument you did.
Yeah, it's very, and I think it's a problem on both sides, but I think that is more a problem on the left than the right, though it does exist on the right, where
Yeah, it absolutely does.
where it is very much we need to restrict these things in this situation because it is for the greater good. And it might work while their person is in office, and then somebody else is going to come along who might not be on anybody's side. It only takes one person to take advantage of all of these things that are already in place to legally make things terrible and set the conditions for terrible, terrible things to happen in this country. And people
Yeah.
forget that every 4 years, there's a chance that somebody, I mean, the left calls Donald Trump a dictator, a fascist dictator. What
Yeah.
happens if there's a real fascist dictator that gets into office and has all of these powers available to them? It's not just these laws and precedences get set while my people are in office. It's this lasts beyond that forever. 80 years from now, these things will be here until they get taken away.
Right. And you have to look through history to really start to comprehend how quickly those things can happen. I mean, to really be whether you want to be a Second Amendment enthusiast, whatever you'd want to call it, or just a well-prepared human being, at its core, you have to be able to understand history and try to overlay some of those tones into the future as well. It's hard to do.
Yeah. Uh, what worries me, kind of to circle back and also kind of add to that, um, all of the things that are happening here right now in terms of the Emergency Powers Act, and now, as of a couple days ago, they've started confiscating people's bank accounts and
Mhm.
freezing them based on whether they donated to a protest or not. That I'm not going to talk about. Please don't kick my door in. Please call off the sniper. I know several people now. They donated $5, $10, whatever, and they now can't pay their mortgage.
Right.
There's a whole bunch of people, and regardless of what their intentions are, people's grannies, people with good intentions who donated to this, and now because the government has decided it's an emergency, their bank accounts have been frozen,
Hmm.
and now they can't buy food, they can't buy groceries, they can't pay their mortgage, they can't anything. And there's no other justification than punishment. There's no
Hmm.
two ways around it. It's the government is punishing people because of their ideology. And now that we have crossed this line, now that it has been done once without any particular pushback, it's going to happen again. Who knows what'll be happen for the next time? But the bar is not going to be as high as it is now, and then the time after that. And to clarify, the bar is not very fucking high right now.
Yeah, you got to think, what if one of those people in Canada that are one of those truckers, right? What if one of them replaces Trudeau and then he's like, hey, remember that time you froze everybody on my side's bank account? Well, yeah, it sucks to suck, doesn't it? And hey, I can do it because under this, state of emergency act or whatever it is that Canada has, we've done it before. The precedent was set, and now I'm going to do it again. You guys
Yeah,
are rioting and destroying cities, so state of emergency, you have no money. Tough.
yeah.
Hmm.
And I'm not going to get into it too much because I don't know the level in which they will kick my door in or freeze my bank account. I'm 1 foot in America already, so I don't want to fucking jinx that.
Yeah.
But it's not great, man. It's not great. Sorry, go on.
No, that's crazy stuff. And I feel for you guys very much so. What let's see. I was going to ask, what can America do? But on one hand, we have tried. I don't know how much money has actually been raised, but I heard there was at some point like $11 million raised by Americans
Oh yeah,
to try to help. I don't know. Violence is not the first answer in any way,
no,
shape, or form.
absolutely not.
Um, but man, my heart
It's
just goes out to you guys.
it's not great, man. We'll see what happens eventually. I just to me, kind of how this is looking from the outside, it's going to turn into a whole January the 6th kind of thing. This is going to be
Yeah.
a propaganda piece for that particular side of the political spectrum for years to come.
Right. And the good news is there is, as previously stated, a massive shift in trusting the government,
Yeah.
trusting news outlets. And there's actually finally now places to go to get news that is not run through a millionaire who is attached to the government, who is receiving information and propaganda pieces that are trying to be pushed to the people.
Yeah.
I'm just thankful that I can't remember who said it, but we're living in unprecedented times. I would also agree that every human alive in the, let's say, 60 to 90 years, depending on the time in history that they're alive, they would argue that they were living in unprecedented times too. I am just thankful that in our unprecedented times, we have an outlet to share information that's completely removed from the government and the major news corporations. That's a huge blessing.
Yeah, it's a very double-edged sword. I think the age of social media and having a camera in your pocket to be a primary source for news or an event that's happening is extremely important. And not even to play devil's advocate, the problem that enables is people going to more biased individuals, where even if I'm on the ground, let's use Ukraine and Russia for example. Let's say I'm a Ukrainian and hypothetically there's absolutely nothing going on, and I'm seeing all this news over in America that's like Ukraine doing all of these things, Russia doing all of these things, and I'm like on the border and I'm like, actually guys, like nothing's going on. That can be a really insightful thing. But what ends
Right.
up happening, even with those primary sources now, is there is so much actual misinformation that when people see these things, even as a primary source, it's like, hmm, I didn't hear this from somebody that I trust, so I don't really
Right.
like it. And it is a
Right.
very, while it is a really good thing and it is good for accountability, there's a negative side where, not to say that disinformation is how everybody uses it now. It's like that's fake news. That's disinformation because it's not nearly as rampant as people think. But it does exist, and there are people that go to those people or those sources, and it creates people go to the narrative that they have already created in their head to reinforce their beliefs. And that
Hmm.
is the problem that I think arises with social media. And we as humans, I don't think, have had this technology long enough to really figure out how to go about this. Uh, but it's both, I think it's more good than bad at the end of the day.
I sure hope so.
Even looking at T.REX Arms, this is something that I kind of, Kyle, when we had Kyle on, he asked us, he was like, what do you look at T.REX Arms as? And for me, I look at you guys more as a hub of information, less so than I do a holster
Yeah,
company.
same.
I know you guys sell holsters, you sell nylon stuff now, but really when I think of T.REX Arms, it's very much, hey, if I ever have a question about something that I have absolutely no idea about, I can message somebody over there and be like, hey, what are your guys' thoughts on this optic? Did it perform well in these conditions? And I'm willing to bet that somebody has an answer for me within that company, be it yourself.
That is really funny. I never even considered that until Kyle talked about it. I don't think I would do that. Just like, hey guys, what's better, an ACOG or just like an EOTech with a G33? I don't think I would message a company to ask, but the fact that you guys are set up for it is actually really neat. And also, all the YouTube content and everything else. I got into it a little with Kyle about how I think T.REX, at least to me, is like a cultural institution. Like the mission statement to me
Mm.
has always seemed to me, again from the outside, and I'm a fucking retard, but it's always been about spreading 2A and what that's about, and getting people into it via the culture war. If you go on your YouTube channel, there is oh, this is the ACR we got in full auto. This is the Modern Warfare 2 gun. Reaching out to people who are interested but have kind of a tangent. It's really easy to talk to gun people. It is. If I went up to you and was like, hey, check out this build. I got a BCM upper with a Hodge barrel and so. We just talk about it. We're nerds in that way. But to reach out to people who otherwise aren't interested, but they like video games, or they like, oh, they watched a little bit of Demolition Ranch, and now here's some guy who can shoot. Oh, what's that he's shooting? Oh, he talks about it. um how I've always seen it is advancing the culture. And you know you guys have a bunch of followers, and people who got into it from various means. All right, let's talk about what it means to be a Minuteman. let's talk about what it means to, have body armor. Or, should this be normal? Yeah, it absolutely should. And I like that. I like that a lot. And yeah, I mean, I also have bought stuff from you guys. There's just a fair amount, kind of scattered all over this room, but
I love it. Yeah, no, what's interesting is I've been a customer and a consumer of T.REX Arms far longer than I've worked for them, which is a really cool outlook for me to be able to see both sides while I'm doing the job and know here's what it's going to look like for the end consumer. And here's why it's so important to get this specific video out. And you mentioned that ACR video. I mean, at the end of the ACR video that we did recently in the snow, Luke ends by saying at the very end, oh, and by the way, full auto should be legal for all civilians, no questions asked.
yeah.
That's the punchline. That's what's left at the end of the video. And you're totally right. Who is going to go watch that ACR video? Well, let me rephrase that. Who is going to stumble onto that ACR video? Someone who's not currently a T.REX Arms customer. Who's going to go find it? The people who are on the edge of finding gun culture. We've seen over the past 10 years, myself included, interest is peaked on firearms because of video games. And that's a huge reason why, I mean, Luke has talked about it a little bit recently, but he's working on a Tarkov comparison and realism kind of video to be dropped. I don't need to get into all the details because I don't want to steal the thunder from T.REX as a business, but the company is putting a lot of time in on connecting people from video games to the current gun culture, theoretically 3.0. That's crazy. And that's it's wild to be a part of it directly after just being a consumer more than anything.
And I'll say from our perspective, when we saw how you guys were going about reaching out to all these different communities and influencing all these folks who might not be part of it, but like you said, they're on the edge. Airsofters, video games, even movie, like crazy movie fans who watch like, a 007 movie and they're like, well, what's he carrying? When
100%.
At least when I saw
Who's
you
that
guys,
guy? Commando Bond. I really like him. Sorry, tangent. Go on.
at least when I saw it, that's where I got the motivation where I'm like, you want to know who's a really good person that we should have on the podcast? Crim 6. And he is he bought a Scar. That was his first gun. We were talking to him about it. Like, he is the best Call of Duty player, the most successful pro Call of Duty player in the world.
Yeah.
And that reach that he has with a vastly different audience than what you guys have, what we have, is so incredibly valuable to what we believe in. And that is, you should have guns if you want guns. And it doesn't matter what you believe. It doesn't matter what anybody says about it. You should just have guns if you want guns.
Right.
Do you have any...
Unless you're Italian. No Italians get guns.
like Italians.
They're not people. They don't get rights. Sorry, go on.
Do you have... I'm curious about the decision-making process. When it comes to these videos, like the ACR video, I think that's a very targeted move for people that played Call of Duty Modern Warfare 2, back in 2008, 2009, who kind of just grew up. Now they're regular adults and maybe they got into guns, maybe they didn't. I feel like that's a very targeted video for them. When it goes into making this content for individuals, what's that decision-making process look like? Like, is there a brainstorm? Does somebody just have an idea? Like, could you go and be like, you want to know what would be really cool? If we did an ACR video.
Yeah, no, well, the beauty to it is we do a combination of flying by the seat of our pants and month-long or 6-month-long endeavors to get the correct content. And I should also state that I'm the armorer. I help the marketing team. I'm on the range a lot. And I'm around when there's a lot of planning done. But that's not really my full-time job. So How do we make decisions on that kind of thing? Yes. How does anyone come up with an idea for making content? You name it, that's how we do it. It happens all the time. But it could be a combination of hey, ACR videos. It's based on the videos that we've shot recently or in the past year or two. People associate our ACR with the snow because it blew up when T.REX was in Vermont. That sticks in people's brains. So, oh my gosh, it's Thursday and it's, tomorrow morning we're supposed to have a foot of snow in Tennessee. That never happens. We have to go film an ACR video. Stuff like that happens all the time. Or, man, oh man, it's going to be pouring rain tomorrow. You know what we should do? We should do a Blade Runner type video. We just come up with stuff based on weather, and then there's other times like I don't know if you guys saw any of the AC Uno debacle that happened.
Yes. I don't want to talk about it without sounding like an idiot, but basically the Mexico scandal.
Yeah, so I mean, without getting into all too many details, and if you want to go read the article that T.REX posted on the website, you certainly can. But the premise is someone who was making our AC1 plate carriers lied to us about where they were actually being produced, and they were being made over the border in Mexico. Well, T.REX Arms decided we are going to go above and beyond for the consumer. We are going to give heavy discounts to people who have previously purchased what they thought was an American-made product, and we're going to dump all of these possibly made AC1s at cost. Okay, we now have a lot of content to generate in 3 weeks because we know that these are being shipped in. We're going to drop them and just sell out as many as we can because we can't tell where they were made. So how does content come up? It can be Lucas has an idea on something that's going to take 6 months to film. It could be we're reviewing a product and it's going to be a year of shooting that optic before we're actually able to say we've shot it in all these environments. We're willing to sell it or encourage people to buy it, whatever you want to call it. Uh, there are so many different ways that we come up with content. We just keep our feet moving.
So focusing on you being the armorer, though, is it so? Before actually I even get into that, I'm curious. Were you always kind of just tinkering with firearms, and that's where you kind of fit in, or was it very much the trend that I see with T.REX Arms people as we've talked to more and more? It's very much, hey, we need somebody to do this job. Can you learn this
Yeah.
job? And most of the time, people are like, yeah, sure, and they learn it. Is that how it felt for you, or were you always kind of tinkering around into it yourself?
Well, I did a lot of armorer work, not necessarily gunsmithing, but armorer work at a gun store back in Portland. Um, and the people there did a phenomenal job of taking my interest in firearms and teaching me a lot more about guns. And here's how a gun goes together. Here's how you properly put a gun together. Um, and so then through that progression, I learned ATF paperwork, how to do a 4473 and run a background check. And then in the mix, I was somewhat interested in guns, but my girlfriend at the time, my now wife, her dad is very gifted in just putting things together. And so he shared so much information with me over the past, I don't know, 10 years of just how to put a gun together, how to run a gun well. And then, the next thing I knew, there was a need for that kind of stuff. ATF paperwork, running background checks, building guns, resolving gun issues on the fly while we're shooting. Oh, and also, Luke isn't free right now. Can you just shoot a gun on camera real quick so we can get this content? It was, and I, I have a lot of learning to do. I am not as professional at all these things. It's a lot of trial and error, but I would say that being that I was a customer of T.REX Arms for 5 to 7 years before I even got there, being in the industry, having a social media, shooting on my own free time for years, I was fairly plug and play. I just needed to get used to how does this company operate, and then let's send it. Let's make it happen.
So very much just kind of the growing pains that anybody has going anywhere. Um, when you are in the arms room, is that kind of, is that the right words? Because I'm very army. Arms room, armor. I think a hobbit that lives in the arms room, and when something's broken, then I can't fix it. Here you go. I don't know what to do.
Absolutely. Yeah. And I do that for, employees. They'll show up with a personal build that isn't running. And I'll do that for everything from a Scar to a Mosin to a Glock. I mean, it doesn't matter what it is. If it's not running right, we'll figure it out. And that's a lot of what I do, just resolving gun issues. And a lot of it is also we'll be out shooting. We are there to get content. The sun is perfect. We have this moment to capture it, fix the problem. A lot of that not smithing, a lot of that armorer work is done on the range, on the fly.
So with that content creation, I've noticed that you and Drew have been having a lot of bushcrafting adventures out in the woods.
Yeah.
What's the reason behind, like, what kind of started that? Were you always doing it and now you're like, let's film it? Or was it, let's go learn something and we'll film it at the same time? I want to know the story behind that because I've been thoroughly enjoying it.
Okay, well, I'll start by saying this. I've been thinking about this recently, and I find this really cool. So if you go look at worldwide, someone who's carrying a gun for self-defense, for personal safety, for military training, law enforcement, whatever else, typically, and I'm a 100% civilian, but typically boot camp, you shoot a gun maybe a couple times, and then we are moving on. We're talking about land nav. We're talking about self-sustainment. We're talking about putting a 50-pound backpack on and traveling 20 miles. Whatever it is, the gun component is only a percentage, and that's okay. For civilians, we've been watching this gun culture 1.0, 2.0, 3.0. I've been growing up in the gun world. There are people like Philip Vallejo. Dude can crush everything at distance. That's his thing. Does he shoot a Glock? Can he draw from concealed, appendix sub-second and put around into a cardboard target? I don't know. But he has his interests. I have my interests. Well, what starts to happen after you do certain things for 5, 10, 12 years? So all of a sudden you go, man, there's more to it than that. I realize I can't read a map and a compass and figure out, okay, I'm going to shoot an azimuth. I can't see beyond that hill, but I'm going to start walking, and here's where I hope I end up. I couldn't do that. And that was a big gap in, I don't want to just be a flat range ninja. So Drew and I started talking about, we have a range. We're in Middle Tennessee. We have space. Do you want to just go for a hike? And we just started doing it. And the T.REX range is a perfect spot because it's private land and we can move steel targets around all we want. That's a huge blessing, an awesome opportunity. But it's been some of the best time to be with like-minded people outside of work and have conversations, sure, maybe about work, but also, hey man, what's going on in your life removed from work? The stuff we don't typically talk about. And that's one of those things that once you start doing it, you get the bug. And every morning it's like, dude, how heavy is your backpack? Oh, I don't know, 35? Yeah, mine's 40. It's that competition. You start building that community. And do you think it's pouring down rain? Do you think we could light a fire? I don't know. Let's try it. You just kind of start bushcrafting for the sake of, that childlike adventure you get when you're finally you're building your first AR. Okay, I kind of miss that. So where do I start with rucking, so to speak? I guess I need a backpack. I'll get an Everly stock. What goes in that thing? I don't know. Let's start researching it. So you find Redbeard Tactical's page, you find your guys' page, you start figuring out, how do I load the backpack? Do you put all the heavy stuff in the bottom? Oh no, I guess not. I got to put some light stuff in the bottom. So it's just this. It's a new horizon for finding the next iteration of what military tends to get first, and civilians are starting to dive into second or maybe even third. But it's really fun.
It is something that I am very happy people are shifting from. I feel like over the last couple of years, the focus has been way too much on the firearm, way too much
I
on
agree.
what goes on it, what type, what it's good for, what it's not, and less on 95% of conducting any operation. And that's
Right.
one thing that, I'm glad you're singing your praises for some people in the military, but one thing that we struggle with in the military that I have been trying to just install in my people for the last couple of years is, okay, we did the CQB, we did the shoot house, we cleared it. Now what? And people are like, what do you mean now? Training's over. I'm like, no, it's not. Now what? And it turns into, oh crap, I didn't have my ruck. Like, how am I going to go set up a patrol base now? I don't have my
Mhm.
equipment. Well, why didn't you have your equipment? Well, because we were just clearing a house. Sure, you got dropped off at the house, but now what? So, focusing on the bit leading up to it, how do you move with a squad to an objective that you're going to do whatever on? Everybody focuses on the objective. We're here on the objective. This is what we do. Actions on objective. All of these, cool, high speed, fun, sexy stuff to do. And then it's all right. That's it. Let's not focus on afterwards. Let's not focus on beforehand. So I'm very. That's why I kind of love seeing what you guys are doing. Um, there was I think it was a short video that Drew posted on a story, and you guys were just kind of sitting out in the rain, just kind of like on top of a hill, just like, not only is that super like therapeutic as like individuals, you're just going out hanging out with your buddy. You're like, I don't know what you guys were necessarily doing at that exact moment, but the training opportunity and changing that perspective, even if you were just kind of sitting down, just kind of talking, the perspective of, hey, we post about guns a lot, we do all this stuff, and now we're also just kind of in the middle of nowhere, just with all of our stuff. And that's when you really start to discover what equipment is good for what situation. And it drives a narrative and focus away from, if you don't have this piece of equipment, then you're whatever. It is very much situation dictates kit. And
Right.
then you go out there, you get after it. And I just love to see it. So,
Yeah.
it's awesome.
Well, and then there's also, you have to ask the question, if you want to be someone who's trying to make a difference. My goal with social media, with the incredible amount of time that I spend on this gun world stuff, why am I doing it? I hope my kids, my future kids, future generations, and future Americans have more rights than I had as far as First and Second Amendment. I mean, all human rights. I hope that they have it. And I'm interested in guns, and so that helps me lean into it. But that leads to the question, what is gun culture 4.0? Right? Well, I can't say because I can't see into the future, but I can sure look and try to encourage people. Okay? Well, pertaining to the Second Amendment and what the ultimate goal is, the Second Amendment is not about deer hunting. It's somewhat about self protection when you're at the gas station carrying a gun every day. Primarily, and it sounds terrible, and I hope to God it never has to happen, but primarily, it's to keep the government in check. Okay, so with that statement, you have to be able to understand that civilians need to have just as much, if not more, capability as current military and law enforcement. And I really hate to say that out loud, but that's the truth. So, gun culture 4.0, what's it going to be? Or 3.5, maybe. Well, if you're going to carry a gun, you may want to know how to walk with a gun. You may want to know how to put a water filtration system in your backpack and use it when you come across a stream. You may want to know how to sleep in the woods, and it is a lot of bushcraft. But I can tell you right now, Drew and I, and also Christian Guzman, he was over at CS for a long time, but he just moved over to marketing in January this year. He's been hiking with us a lot as well. Well, our goal is, let's get to the point where we can carry 40 to 50 pounds in a rifle for 10, 15 miles. And then we need to start talking about walking information the whole way. We need to start talking about, cover and move when you come to an intersection. You need to start talking about those things. And people are going to look at it when they see civilians doing that kind of stuff, like they looked at us when we were doing fast transitions from rifle to pistol, or putting night vision on and shooting on a flat range with night vision. We're going to have to learn how to hike with night vision, shoot steel targets as the sun comes up, and then get out. All of those kinds of things. But it starts with, let's get in shape. Let's get people used to seeing us carry a gun with a big backpack on while wearing a multicam jacket. And then we'll progress from there. But there's a long game here. We're not just playing let's go for a little hike and have fun. There's an ultimate goal.
I noticed, I forget what that big airsofting event that you guys participated in.
Milsom West?
Was that it?
Yeah. We went to, the most recent one was Copperhead. That was quite a haul for us.
I noticed, I was watching a video that Drew put out about it, and it was crossing an LDA. And he was like, yeah, I didn't really know how to do this, but somebody in our group directed us, and we went about it. And I saw that, and I'm like, why did I never make a guide about crossing an LDA? And
Yeah.
not that I think, I think our guides are very good for like a basic concept understanding and should not substitute going out and actually doing something. But I saw that, and I'm
my God, no. It's supplementing. Like, it's tools in the toolbox.
It's a training aid. But I saw that, and I'm like, yeah, these are, I had an idea already that a lot of these things were important, but when I saw that video in particular, I remember thinking like, this is really where the direction is headed, and I love to see it. I am by
love to see it.
Go ahead.
I just said I love to see it. I was just accentuating on your thing. I wasn't trying to interrupt.
I am by no means an expert in doing any of these things. I like to think I have a little bit of knowledge and training just because I got to hike around the mountains in Europe and the Baltic states for years and years with many different militaries and all these other things. Dude. But seeing it happen more regularly around here makes me realize how little I've been doing it myself and how much I need to get out and get after it. And if that's happening with me, just from seeing you and Drew hanging out in the woods, I imagine that's happening for a lot of people. And there's a negative side to it that I think happens very often with T.REX folks when you start posting things that are, not in your lane, so to say. When you start to get those comments or messages, does it bother you like even a little bit?
Oh man, maybe it's how I was raised, but I am able to kind of detach and see the third person point of view. That person is missing a lot of context. They're not able to see what we are trying to do. And they're stuck in a certain mindset. And who knows where they got that mindset? Civilians are not supposed to have guns. Or civilians are not supposed to have guns and shoot and move. Or civilians are not supposed to have guns and night vision. Wherever on the scope they're stuck. And it may also just be pride. They may be stuck in, well, I can't do that, so he shouldn't be able to. Or someone who I look up to told me that he shouldn't be able to do that. Wherever it is, they're probably just missing context. And that goes back to some of the downsides of social media. A lot of these people I would love to sit down and have a beer with and just be like, send it. What am I missing here, man? let that person talk, and I'd love to be able to have a face-to-face conversation, but Instagram or YouTube is just not always the best place. What does tend to happen though, and I love seeing stories like this. Um, I've had a lot of haters on Instagram. Well, some of them who are social media famous, and our friendship has turned around because it's been years of me just saying, "Okay, man, maybe I don't understand your point of view, but I'm going to keep doing me." And then it just turns into an awesome friendship. And ultimately, they see it my way because I just keep doing what I'm doing. So does it bug me? What bugs me is that they are not able to see outside their bubble. But I think I've done a pretty good job of being able to detach, put the phone down, and just not be bugged by it.
I think part of taking a job at T.REX Arms, you kind of have to be aware that it is a controversial company in many different aspects.
Sorry, your
And
New York just came out when you said arms. I can't even imitate it properly. I wish I could, but
it's
sorry, go on.
my New York accent comes out every so often.
New York.
Um, I think though, when you take a position there, you have to be considering like, okay, I've seen the past controversies. I see what people are saying in the comments because it's every post, regardless. And when you enter into that world, not only where people, it's very easy for people on social media to say their opinions, not think about it, and then go about their day. It makes me wonder, when you put out content, do you think about the narrative it's going to not only push, and I'm not talking about T-Rex, I'm talking about you personally on your page. Do you think about the narrative that is going to push and the conversations that's going to start and how that might embolden some people to start having opinions about what you do?
Yes. And a lot of those posts, even in America, could also get me in trouble too, in some ways. There's a lot of narratives that we are pushing in order to push freedom. Myself, I shouldn't speak just for T.REX Arms, although I know that that's true, but I know that there are a lot of down to earth facts about human freedom, basic human freedom, and human rights that if I state civilians should have access to nukes, oh, and also civilians should be able to put stocks on their whatever barrel length they want. Yes, I am aware of those conversations. That's one extreme. And there are extremes that are, well, not an extreme, but kind of a middle of the road. I know some military dude is going to get really pissed about me saying that I have multiple sets of body armor. I have suppressors, some that I've made on my own and done a Form 1, others that I've purchased from Surefire. There are people that are going to get pissed about that. But man, I keep coming back to this concept every time that I'm about to post something that I feel like, man, this is going to start a big hubbub. So people are going to be talking about this and some people are going to be frustrated. And here's what I always come back to. My Instagram, I can tell you right now, is not going to last 15 years. But if my kids ever stumble across some of the content that I have posted way back in 2022, I want it to be a lightning rod of energy for them. I want them to be freaking stoked to go get after it, pursue freedom, encourage others to be free, to live their own life, become self-sufficient, to be self-sufficient both to stay alive and also to free themselves from, oh, I got to pay these certain taxes and I'm stuck paying it to those people. And I can't say those words because I'll get in trouble. I mean, it leads back to, why am I putting so much energy in this? Because I want my kids, and future generations to have more freedoms and more opportunities for these rights than I do. So yeah, I do post things knowing that someone's going to get a little pissy, but I hope it lights a fire under some people in the future as well.
When it comes to your social media, then, I think something that is not only lost, it's overlooked. people will see what you're posting, and it's, well, why aren't you posting this? Why aren't you doing this while you're doing that? And it's like, well, I have one picture of me doing one tiny part of whatever it is I was doing. And it's funny because we'll get messages about the T.REX arm guys. We'll get messages, oh, Garant Thumb is selling out and just took an ad for whatever, what was that one? Clash Battle
Raid
Royale?
Shadow
Raid
Legends.
Shadow Legends. Like, I don't know why we'll get messages about you folks, and I'll look at it and I'll see the post, and it's very much like, okay, so somebody at T.REX was shooting on a flat range this day and they focused on whatever. You don't know what they're doing before that. You don't know what they're doing after that. It is very much, this is what we're doing today, and here is a small part of it. Is that something that, like, I think of myself, I would probably make jokes about that within the company? Or is it kind of something where you can go to work and you see, and it's like, yeah, people are going to be talking about how we're only doing this part today, like the whole, but can you do this thing?
Yeah, I mean, we try to create content that's based on information, and some of that information is geared toward, you may want to have the mindset that, hey, if I'm just responding to, let's say my rifle runs dry, and my rifle ran dry. Do I reload the rifle or do I transition to pistol? People still love to argue about that kind of stuff. Or the old, 2018, do you look at your magwell when you reload your pistol? Like, no one really cares anymore. But it is all situation dependent. And yes, we will run drills, and it could be Chad or Charles, someone who's filming, they could say, oh, just so you know, you haven't shot something recently where you quickly transition from rifle to pistol as opposed to just reloading the rifle. Let's get some content and do it that way.
When we were before we were even recording, you were mentioning how, I don't know if you consider it part of your job, that once a month or whenever you can, you'll be bringing out some people in the T.REX Arms company to go out and shoot. Is that kind of like in the job description, or is it very much like your lifestyle is doing what you do? It's very, this is you inside of work and this is you outside of work.
Yeah, that's a good question. Not at all in the job description. Well, in some ways, I know that they had hoped for that kind of thing, but sometimes when you hire someone to, run paperwork and do, gun maintenance and things like that, you're not always sure who you're going to get for. You can get someone who can shoot, but they may not be the best at running a range. And I have a lot of growth in doing that as well. That's something I should work on and prioritize a lot. But yeah, it's probably about 4 times a month that I'll go out with, the development team will have a new holster, or we have a different Ragnarok and we're trying to upgrade it just so that it has a different fit or a different style, or we're trying to add, different gun platforms because let's say Smith & Wesson comes out with a brand new gun, or a new light drops and okay, everyone wants to carry with this light now. We got to make a bunch of holsters. That dev team has to hit the range and they got to go shoot. And they need help setting up stuff on the range. How do they go run certain drills? How do we test this holster well? Do we have to go at night to shoot with white light? And then, CS will need to they'll need to learn about new optics that are coming out, whether or not T.REX is going to carry those products. T.REX is just known for, if you have a question, we'll figure it out for you. We'll find the answer and we'll get you an answer. So, yeah, I'm on the range with people that are not marketing at least once a week, and that's been awesome. I love just learning with other people, sharing information. Maybe I will look through an optic and I'll see, it's kind of blurry on the edges, and someone else will pick it up and be like, that's interesting because my eye does not see that at all. Okay, now we have dual perspective. We can share that information, and I love uncovering those kinds of things with other people, and it it takes care of not just T.REX Arms, but it takes care of the whole industry.
Is your wife into shooting at all?
If I didn't start dating my wife at 15, I would not be here right now. Period. No questions asked.
Really?
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah. I was interested in guns, but she can shoot. I mean, she is a dirt biking, gun shooting girl that you would not guess it at all. She's 105 pounds and 5'3", maybe 5'2", and just small, quiet little girl that can run a gun and ride a dirt bike. And she got me into all of this stuff years ago, and
Yeah.
I took it and ran.
You've been with her since you were 15 years old. How old are you now?
I'm 26, so we dated for a long time. Got married at 21, and I mean, she's my best friend.
Yeah.
That's been a huge a huge blessing to be able to move to Tennessee and completely shift pretty much all of our life. And be out here with a best friend and someone to do life with and lean on. And we didn't really know anybody. I had made phone calls with Drew and Lucas and some other people in the past, but we were the only people to really take care of each other for the first 6 months while we were still getting to know people out here. So
Yeah, that's a. I haven't been dating my wife since we were 15. I was 17 and she was 16 when we met. But having somebody that is willing to move around the country with you, I mean, and have them still be your best friend and somebody that you can love at the end of the day, it's something a lot of people, especially in the military, think that they have. And that's why a lot of people get married really young and then they have to move once. And it's like, but I already established all my friends here. And it's like, yeah, but now I need you to, uproot your life. And it's a difficult thing.
yeah.
How were there any kind of like growing pains with you with that when it was like, okay, we've been together for this long, I have to go here? Or was it like, yeah, I'm on board with you, let's go?
Oh man, it was probably 3 months of we both flew out. T.REX flew us out. We both looked at Tennessee and the company and the space and everything. We went back. Job offer came in, and they gave us some time to think about it. But once we had talked to parents, and we both have awesome parents. They're still back in Oregon, all having dinner together. They It's a close family, which is awesome. But as soon as we both were like, yeah, I think it's good for us to go, she was on board, and it was full send. I mean, packing the house up, selling things that didn't fit in the pod, and let's just do it.
I love that. I freaking love that.
You recently purchased a new house, didn't you?
Oh, good question. So oh my gosh, in the last year, we have moved 4 times, which has just been like, we still had boxes that were packed in Oregon. And then we moved to an apartment. And then we were going to move into a house, but that fell through. And so we were out of the apartment, stayed with some new friends that, I mean, God bless those people. They hardly knew us at all, but he worked at T.REX, and he was like, well, we have a 2-bedroom, 1-bathroom house. Do you want to stay with us for a month? Because we didn't have a place to stay. And so we landed there for a while. And then finally now, a year later, we're in a house that actually fits us. We're renting for the moment, but there's bigger plans in the future that are in the works. But having a low rent and a decent house to be in farm country next to work that's what we need right now. So that's been awesome.
Yeah, and when you have somebody such as your wife, who sounds like an absolute wonderful lady, and bless her for getting you into firearms.
Yeah.
How did that start though? So you're 15, you're dating this girl who's into firearms and dirt bikes and stuff, and you were just kind of like, yeah, let's get into that. Like, now I want to know how you started getting into guns.
Oh yeah. Well, I mean the the deeper story is she's an only child, and uh, her dad was stoked to have a dude around, and my wife is a gun person, but at the end of the day, it's not her passion like mine. And so her family, primarily her dad, it would be like, well, Friday night, am I picking you up at 5:30 in the morning? Yep, we're gonna go shoot, and we would just go shoot on the weekends, and built a friendship long before Jenna and I ended up Jenna, my wife, before we ended up getting married, and her family just really did an awesome job of bringing me into the family, and it happened slowly, but next thing I knew, I was building a social media, and he was super supportive, and my wife was super supportive, and it just exploded way faster than I expected.
You're a lucky man, dude. I'm thinking of girls that I dated when I was 15. Some of their dads were really cool, some weren't. I was also an asshole as a kid, so I kind of understand it from a new dad's perspective. Nobody's ever going to be good enough for my little girl.
Of course.
But wow, you were 15, you started dating this girl. Did you think that you were going to end up in Tennessee doing a job for T.REX Arms, or what did you kind
Oh
of want
my,
to be when you were growing up?
oh my gosh, no! I did the whole. Okay, well, I'm done with high school. I guess I'll go to community college and study some business. And this sucks. I don't know what I'm doing here. And then I went and got my EMT and started taking some courses on firefighting and learning all that sort of stuff. And that was interesting. I enjoyed. I worked as an EMT for gosh, maybe a year or two, and I felt like I was just sitting in an ambulance reading a book for 10 of the 12 hours a day. It was so slow. It was just not what I needed. So even in Portland, it's kind of a shocker, but there just wasn't much going on. And then I ended up getting a job at a gun store, and man, that was the ticket.
Did you bring any of that medical training from kind of that EMT stuff into kind of what you do now? Because I think that's also where the culture is shifting to. It's self-sustainment, and also like, hey, if you're hiking and you're moving to an objective, even if we want to get tactical with you, you're moving to an objective and you roll your ankle, or you know something happens. Is there anything from that that's kind of translating over?
Yeah, I mean, there are certain situations where, okay, for one, if I'm on the range with, let's just say, the customer service team, and guns are inherently dangerous. If something were to happen, I have been in fairly hairy situations, not a lot of them, but enough that I know how I react. I know, okay, I'm going to have adrenaline, and I know how to work through that. I know how to calm myself, see the scenario in third person. Here's where, here's how we need to go about this situation. I mean, even, I don't know if you guys saw the picture a couple of weeks ago, but Lucas had it was like a 37 millimeter grenade launcher, and the grenade blew up about 3 inches outside of the tube, and it came
Oh, I
back and hit.
remember that. Yeah, his
Yeah, yeah,
face. He had eye pro.
yep. He had sunglasses on, but it blew off the sunglasses, shrapnel everywhere, and that was a moment where it was like, okay, well, Luke's face is bleeding. He can't hear or see very well. We got to start doing something. Someone has to take action. And not that I, jumped in and saved the day, but I at least was able to be in a scenario where I knew what the steps that had to happen, how to resolve some of those issues, and Luke should not drive himself home like he, not saying that he knew that he shouldn't drive himself home, but like there are steps that allow me to just be at peace in some of the crazy moments in life. But I'm not a medical instructor. It's just been a huge asset in my life where, hey, Drew, let's go for a hike. Oh man, if you do roll your ankle, we'll be all right. I know how to proceed. And that's just been a little tool in my back pocket just in case something ever does
With the
happen.
T.REX Arms guys, I see you're kind of taking up the profile picture of, it seems like, all the faces of T.REX Arms. Was that on purpose?
That was one of the guys took a picture
Yeah.
like I don't know, a couple nights ago. I think it was Christian, and he was like, "Dude, this is going to be your new profile pic," and I was like,
Ah,
"Okay, whatever." And then he edited it, and it came through, and I was like, "Oh, dang, that's actually really
What does your
cool."
family think about you? Like, because they have to see your social media, I imagine. What do they think of you kind of being out here doing your own thing now?
Yeah, well, so I was raised in a homeschool
You were homeschooled
family,
too.
very close,
ah,
Was it?
close to. I know it fits with T-Rex arms, right?
it really does. Yeah.
No, it was. Let's see. Okay, so my parents were very supportive. They were like, "Do it. Let's see what happens. Go for it." At the time, my girlfriend's parents were like, "What are you? What are you doing? You're you're playing with guns on social media. That's fairly new to the gun industry. You are not even 21 yet, and you are like trying to draw from appendix with an airsoft gun. What's and I'm dating their daughter, and my in-laws are like, or not yet in-laws, they're like, whoa, what's the intention here? Where are you going with this? What's the goal? And I stated, if I can get some ammo to help fund the training, I made it. And so like a year in, some company sent me some ammo, and I was like, yes, this is it. And they were like, okay, well, it's still not a job. Like, why are you putting so much time into this? Things progressed. And then the next thing, we all knew it was not a job, but it was funding my hobby. And it was reaching the point where I had a say in the industry, a very small say, a small percentage, but to the point where I was valued. Um, and as soon as those things started to happen, not that they never didn't support me, but the support, like, okay, let's go shoot, let's go get some training. This is a big deal. That really started to happen. And T.REX Arms is big enough in the industry that as soon as a job offer came through, they were like, "Holy cow, we didn't know that that's where that was going, but you got to take that opportunity. That sounds awesome." Super supportive, and it's been
Yeah, that's kind of something where I'm trying to figure out how to communicate that with my family, because my family, yeah, my
Oh, we
family
never
has
got into
no
this.
idea. Like, yeah,
Same. Yeah, they don't know anything.
what? That's so
Yeah.
crazy to me. Okay, go on. I want to hear
it's
more
not
about
like I'm
this.
hiding it.
I don't think we've ever brought this up.
Yeah, it's not like I'm hiding it. It's just kind of like I've never had the reason to tell them yet. And I've been so, because I've been in the army, 17, since I was 17, I haven't lived at home, and I'm like 20, I think I'm 26 now. I usually have to ask my wife. I'm 25 or 26. But I went from, yeah,
This is
I
not
go
the
to
first time
Europe
this has happened.
for a couple of years. Then I go back to New York, but it's way further upstate than where I'm from. And I'm still like 4 hours away from my family. And then I come out to Colorado.
Yeah.
And I've always been into guns, and my whole family is kind of into guns. But I've never been like, yeah, I mean, because right now I'm on the verge of retiring from the military. I'm getting out, and my whole family. I get texts from my
Hmm.
mom all the time. She's like, "So you're coming home? Like, when are you coming home?" And I'm like, "Well, actually, I have a couple job. Like, I don't say this. I'm like, I have a couple job offers. I don't tell her like in what. She'll ask what, and I'm like, oh, maybe social media stuff or just working for like a company in general, and that's usually the extent that it goes. And she doesn't know, like my whole family just doesn't know, like, yeah, like C Bernard is, I'm one half of it, and I run these things, and I don't even think they're aware that that page exists. But kind of my passion is working with this page and working on all the projects and progressing gun culture, and that's not something that I can do in New York. And I think when I tell them like, yeah, I have job offers, they're like, how do you have these job offers? Like, what do you do? You've been in the army. Like, what are you gonna do when you get out? Type deal. So it's something that I'm trying to figure out how to communicate with them. And I could
Hmm.
just tell them. I don't think they're going to judge me. It's more just like it's never really come up, and when I tell them, they're not really. I don't think they're going to be like, "Oh my god," or it's not going to be like one way or the other, really good or really bad. It's just kind of something that's like, I mean, it hasn't really come up, and nobody in my personal life has really asked me. Like my wife knows about it. I think my in-laws, like, they know I have a podcast, and it makes me sound like a loser. I'm sure they're like, "Oh, you're some loser with a
Yeah.
podcast." Oh,
Yeah, it's just
yeah,
kind of
it's
the
kind of
eye
funny.
roll sort of thing. It's like, oh yeah, so all of your 6 listeners that you know from your D&D club will really like this.
You talked to all your
Exactly.
internet
And it's a
friends.
funny thing
Yeah.
that I always admire when I see somebody like yourself or, anyone that has their page and it is their personality, their lifestyle. That's, you know, you're out there taking pictures of just doing fun stuff or doing whatever it is that you're doing, posting about your life in general. That's how I knew about a house. And that always intrigues me because I can't picture being like, yeah, me and my family retired from the army. I got this job offer down in Tennessee potentially that I might go and do. I'm like,
Offer.
Oh, I heard it
it's
too.
a
Yeah.
weird thing to me, and it's something that I admire that people are able to do.
Well, I'll say
Yeah.
that it's really strange to be in my position and have anyone show interest in like, oh, you moved into a new house. That's really cool. I mean, it's cool for me, but I also don't understand why anyone else cares. Um, Beyond that, though, it always goes back to this. I understand that there is not just gun culture, but freedom culture at stake. Trust me, I would love to get off
Oh,
social, I would love to get off social
yeah.
media. I would love nothing more. But at what cost is
Yeah.
the question. Ah, it's
We actually
rough.
had this conversation a couple days ago, talking about like, and I bring it up a lot. Like, I don't like social media, and Mitch approached me in private. And he's just like, "Is social media okay for you?" Like, and my answer is like, yes, because I like the advancement of freedom culture, and I like that my face isn't inexorably attached to it. It's not like people aren't asking me how my day is, and like they'll ask me about my cat and so, but people like there's not a lot of a face to put to a name. Like if my face is out there, but they're not really talking to me as a person so much as me as the guy who draws guides, and Mitch as the Mitch.
Well, that's something that you have, Nathan. You like some of your friends in real life like know about, and you communicate with them to that. I have one person besides my
Yeah,
wife
a few.
that like knows that like I'm Seaburn Art or I'm one half of it.
Oh yeah, it's a few people in my life, like the gun people, know generally, and I find it really funny when they interact with our content. Just like some shooting buddies and whatnot know that who I am, but my family has no idea. A lot of my friends have no idea.
Hmm.
Some people are so outside the shooting world. Like my friends Liv and Stephanie, they both listen to the podcast, and they are not part of any of this, and they listen to every episode, and I find that hilarious. But
Do either of you ever get concerned about being found out? Like it's
not really.
something to hide, or is
Yeah.
it just it just never really comes up?
Just never really comes up. And if they're not really part of that world, like I like bringing people into it, but I don't want to bring them into it with like, oh yes, here's my page where I you know with someone else we will publish guides on CQB. Like that, I don't want that to be their introduction. I want their introduction to be like, hey, here's a single shot 22, here's a semi-auto 22, what's cool, full auto, we should be able to own it, and this is why, kind of on its own terms instead of jumping them off. But like for example, my family, it doesn't come up because they are so against this
Hmm.
world. Holy crap! I remember my dad. God, he was under the impression all semi-autos were illegal here, and I told him, hey, I used an AR-18 the other day, and he goes, an AR-18? Didn't that get banned with an assault weapon ban? It's an AR, so that means it's an assault rifle. And I look at him and I go, no, it's an AR-18. It's 3 more ARs than an AR-15, therefore it's still legal. And he goes like, oh. And that's about as far as we get into it. And my family is very much like, oh, why you know become doctor? You know businessman, as I do my horrible racist impression of my mom. But it God, oh, should we cut that out? No, fuck it. These days she knows kind of tangentially that I'm a graphic designer for some unknown
Hmm.
industry. And I don't really go past that. She knows that, I'm paying the bills and that's all that really matters. And we, catch up and get a pita or something every once in a while, but as far as I'm concerned, she really wouldn't really
Hmm.
approve of it. So, and that's totally okay. That's there's a certain irony too. She escaped as a child a totalitarian communist country and is now
Wow.
here, through a large variety of, and we had a discussion, and this is years ago, and this is kind of one of the things that put me onto the path that I currently inhabit. And I can't remember the context of the conversation, but uh, somehow I ended up asking her, "Are you all right with the government just like being able to read all of your emails and text messages and everything else?" And she goes, "Yes, if I had nothing to hide, that's totally okay." And that's like, God, I think I was a teenager, and that put me onto the path where here I
Hmm.
am. I think like that wasn't the thing that got me into guns, but it's the thing that got me into everything else.
Yeah, I think for me, it's more. I think of the people that I used to hang out with, not before this page, just in general. Like even before, a couple years ago when I originally started this thing, like I think of the people that I used to associate with and hang out with, and why I wasn't getting really anywhere except for, my job in the army. That was all I was doing, and it was because I was surrounding myself with people that were very content with doing like the bare minimum. And I don't want to sound like an asshole like I'm better than them, but one thing that I've learned to do is to surround myself with people that are more successful than myself or equally driven, because when you start having those folks around you that aren't, it can really influence you in ways that you don't even realize until, 5 years go, you know, down the road like for me, and all I had ever done was the army. Like that's all I ever had. It was, yeah, I can jump out of planes, I can shoot guns all right, and I can walk really far. But what value do I have outside of that? And we kind of talked with Justin from Core Performance about finding your value as a person and not as like whatever your job is. And I guess that's kind of why I'm like not eager to have my like personal life kind of be on social media, because then people that I previously have hung out with or previously associated with will see it and maybe be like, like this isn't the Mitch that like we knew, like what's going like. And I don't know, I don't think they're gonna like drag me down, and I'm not saying that like they're like scum of the earth like lower than me. It's just kind of, as I grew as a person, I've realized who I want to be around and what type of people I want to be around. And a lot of people from my past, it sounds super dramatic, way more dramatic than it actually is. I just kind of am like, meh, you're still working at Stewart's gas station in upstate New York, and you had that job when we were 15. Like, we have to kind of move beyond
Right.
that. And I don't
Yeah.
think them finding the page and finding me is going to be anything crazy, even if they do. It's just, I don't know. It's like a weird part where I'm like, how do I I've grown so much as a person and I still have so much growing to do. How do I mix who I am now with people that only know me from like a certain point? And it's weird. It's a weird thing for me that maybe makes me sound like pretentious or like I'm looking down on people, and that's not at all what I'm saying. Um, it's just a weird thing when the idea of combining like the person that I am now with people's perception of what I was 5 years ago that knew me.
Yeah. No, agreed. And I mean, from what I have found, the best people to spend time with, and we all know that you become the people that you hang out with. You capture their, I don't know, characteristics, the habits that they have, all of those things. For better or for worse, you become the people that you hang out with. And the best people that I have found are the people that have something to live for bigger than themselves. It's I exist, and for some awesome people, it can simply be family. My goal is to just really take care of my family, and you can connect with other people that have those same goals as well, and that's awesome. For other people, it could be, I'm starting a small business, and other small business owners have a lot to relate on that kind of thing, but they have a goal bigger than themselves. And something that's super cool to see you guys do is you have not prioritized personal fame, but the page itself has grown because only because of the content that you put out. Now, the content that you put out has your fingerprints on it, no question. CBRN has, both Nathan and Mitch, the what you see in the graphics and the edits, and what you see and learn in whoever's writing the articles and putting those bullet points together, and what order do you put that content in. It really is you two, or maybe whoever else is involved. But it is not, hey, look at me, I just got a house and moved, which our industry and really all of media these days is saturated in. Look at the person. That gets really tiring. Look at the greater goal. I never get burnt out on that. That's pretty awesome. So what you guys are doing is spot on.
Yeah, I mean, I appreciate that.
Oh, thank you, man. That's just really nice. I see Mitch just grinning over there. Just
Well, it makes me think of our conversation we had the other day, where it's very much there are
yeah.
opportunities to do certain things with this page that would be very beneficial for us personally, that wouldn't be good for the overall meaning of why we started this page. And once you start getting money
Right.
involved, I think there's a right way to do it. And I think there's very much a wrong way to do it. And big numbers start getting thrown around. And that is enough, I think, to tempt any, poor starving artist or myself who is also poor. It is very tempting. But at the same time, you think
Yeah.
about the original intent that I at least I think of what I started this page way before I even communicated with Nathan. And it was, hey, there's a lack of information. I have a little bit of information in Seaburn. So I'm going to, because I think it's important, I'm going to communicate that with people. And then it evolved into what it is now, to where I have Nathan and we work so well together to make something way more digestible than what I was doing, which was going on Instagram stories, writing a wall of text, screenshotting it, cropping it, and then posting it. And that was like the guides at the time. So you think of the original mission statement, which was put out information because there's a lack of information and I think it's important, to how it's pretty much still the same thing, and how now it's me and Nathan and two other people. And we all kind of have our own different roles, and it's a very information driven thing. Now there's the entertainment value that come with, the pop culture references and the guides and, the things that Nathan adds that I don't even understand. And I think that's part of what makes us work so well together. We have different,
Yeah.
different, like hobbies and things that we do in our own time that contribute to it. But it is very still the original mission statement with, hey, there is a lack of information here, or at least digestible information in this aspect. So let's, put it out there, whether we consult with other people or whether we do it now ourselves. It is still very much, we need to get information out there. And that is the main mission statement. I think with the podcast, I, maybe it's me with my mental gymnastics with it, trying to justify it. I try and make it personable but also informative, not on the same level as guides. Guides are very information about like tactical stuff or even gardening sometimes, or just like in general. I like to think the podcast is more, we want to know about this person, why this person is the way that they are, maybe why they're successful in running a company when we interview a CEO. Or for you, it's, hey, I think, what you're doing is really cool. I appreciate what you're doing. And I want to know how this came to be and, what you're doing now. And, there's definitely a lot of stuff where, I'm asking you about like a decision making process. And while that might on surface level be like, oh, yeah, I just want to know like what's going on at T.REX. But for me, it's very much how are they doing it and how can I apply the good things that they're doing that I like to how we do things here. And maybe they do it this way and I don't really like that, so we're not going to do that. So it's both informational and entertaining, I think. And that's something that will never change.
Yeah.
And if it does ever change here, I'd like to think that all of us, all four of us now, are going to hold each other accountable. And we're going to be like, hey, like, this isn't what we're meant to be doing. Like, well, why are we doing that? So
I am looking forward to. We are kind of tangentially looking into video content at some point, just like versions of the guides and things like that. Kind of working towards that. That's a future goal, but at the same time,
yeah,
even if things just keep on going the way
bringing
that
the
they are, I'm
guides to
pretty happy.
life.
It's I like. I never really thought about how distilled it is. Like we've removed our personalities from it quite a bit. Like a lot does bleed through. I never really thought about it that way, and that's really neat.
Yeah, well, I mean, you guys have clearly done a good job of educating people, myself included,
Thank
to
you,
the
man.
point, to the point where I'll, I don't know, I'll come across a question and I will just hop on your Instagram page and scroll until I find the answer because there's some stuff out there that I'm like, I think they did a post about that. Let me go back and see. And I'll just scroll back through and go, yeah, that's right. There it is. Gas masks. They had a
Ah,
write up on gas masks. Which one do I want to buy? There's good information here, and they did a detailed overview of each one of these things, and it's written in a way that I can understand as a homeschooler who can read in, third grade levels. And so now I understand what I want to buy, and I go buy that
Yeah,
thing.
and I mean that is one of the best compliments, even if it's not meant as one that I personally can get. I'm not going to speak for Nathan there.
no, I love it. I'm just here. Like my ego has been inflated. I'm
No,
just riding this high.
we have a lot of fun doing it. And I think one of the main things that Nathan and I do very well that I can recognize is we know how we would want information presented to us. So it's like, hey, this is how I would want this communicated to me.
Yeah.
Oftentimes, if I go to like a class or if I'm learning from another person in the military, they have their very professional, technical words that I honestly I don't understand.
Yeah. Everything's like another
So
acronym
we
and
try and
another acronym
eliminate
and
that.
another
And
acronym.
it's like, if you don't know anything about this subject, you can grasp the concept. And when I write guides, what I'll do, my wife, who is not into guns, not into tactics, not into any of this stuff, I'll show it to her and I'll be like, do you understand this? And she's like, yeah, I get what you're trying to do. I get what you're saying. And then she'll be like, well, I don't understand this. So can you explain this a little bit more? And then I'll go back in and I'll be like, okay, so this is how, like this would be. Because sometimes my military can bleed through, and that's not the language that I want these guides to be in.
Yeah. There's something really awesome about, if you're teaching a class or learning through social media, this whole gun world, being able, well, I guess I'll put it this way. I was very blessed with the opportunity to teach alongside some badass dudes uh, who are still doing some cool stuff. When I was in Oregon, a company called Core Vision Training, and those guys asked if I would just teach rifle and pistol one, which I was qualified enough to do, and I got to hang out with those guys. Well, people would get a perspective from military terms. You'd have a ranger who's telling you how to shoot a pistol, and then you have a civilian tell you how to shoot a pistol. And for some people, certain, whether it's an acronym or a militaristic style of teaching, here's your bullet points, repeat, or hands-on experience and teaching, and okay, you put your hand on the gun and I'll do the same and we'll figure out what's going on different. Whatever the teaching styles are, you're right, the military does have a very specific way of sharing information, and civilians tend to as well. And as soon as someone's been in the military or even in a business setting for, let's say, 20 years, the standards and the process for sharing information and teaching and coaching someone can become, well, how do you not understand this? This is so easy. How do you not get this? Because that they're just ingrained to share information that way. And I guess it doesn't have to be military and civilian. The point is, when you get people from two different perspectives trying to share the same information, you can teach a lot of people a lot more, because those two instructors are coming from very different backgrounds. And that's something that I think T.REX is trying to do and doing very well. Is, hey, you can gather a lot of you could go read the Ranger Handbook and gather a lot of information, but we're a bunch of civilians and we're trying to gather this information too. We'll share some of the same information, maybe not all of it, but here's how we would teach it, and now you go learn on your own.
Yeah, one thing that I've learned from coaching kids soccer before I started coaching at the level I'm at now, I started doing volunteer work at it was like a Sunday league, a summer league, with younger kids, and I learned really quick that I have to coach to my players' strengths and not what I want their strengths to be.
Hmm.
And having different ways to communicate and understanding when to pull them out and when to change how you communicate depending on who you're trying to communicate with is an invaluable lesson that I am very humbled and glad that I learned when it comes to, it was such a meaningless, like low risk environment of just teaching kids how to play soccer. Because, I'm in the Army. If somebody does something wrong, I can be like, hey, jackass, you're fucking up. And maybe somebody will learn like that. Or it's, hey,
Yeah.
you need to do this better and this is how you can go about it. And coaching kids has translated into the military, and it's translated into how I portray, information in the guides and just life in general. Being able to communicate is such a important and overlooked thing. And I think a lot of people within our community could benefit just how they learning how to communicate. Some people come off as very abrasive, and maybe that's intentional. But if they're trying to grow, maybe their audience or push, the gun culture changing, you have to understand how the audience you might trying to be reach is going to be turned away because you are being accommodating to the audience that you already have. So it's a very communication skills are something that I could talk about all day. I'm actually writing a guide on different leadership styles that I've learned, and I think I think people are going to take it in a way that's like,
That's a good idea.
Awesome.
oh, you think you're better because you have all these tools. And it's like, no, there's a lot of mistakes in here. This is just stuff that I've learned in a short 8 years of being a leader in different aspects, be it coaching, be it the Army, be it, director of a soccer club. It's all things that I've tried to learn. And I think, I hope it can be, beneficial for folks, and I hope that people understand that this is not the end all be all, and I am still very young and very much learning all of these things.
Yeah. No, that's spot on. That's that general mindset is really where I started my social media. I was very aware that I did not know very much, and well, that's still the case, but that's kind of where I come from with social media is, hey, I'm still learning, but when I pick up on something, I'm happy to share the info. And I am not
Yeah.
the end all be all on any topic, period. But as I learn things, I may catch something that you know a lot about already. And if that's the case, you can comment on the post and give me more information. And I may catch something that you hadn't thought of. And so when it's kind of a two-way street, I get to learn and I get to share bits of info. I like to think multiple people can benefit from it, but well, it's been a pretty fun ride so far, and it's gotten me a dream job, so that's an upside.
I think being humble and you are a humble person from what I can tell, and most of the people we've had on here have been. It's so friggin' important, and being able to recognize, especially as new information or different methods come up, and being like, yes, these are also valid, or no, maybe this new method actually works better than what I learned. Being adaptable is so important. I put out a guide a while ago, and I'm still kicking myself in the butt for it. It's the how to properly grip a
Hmm.
pistol guide. Um, I always grip a little harder with my support hand than my hand that's actually on the weapon, and like 70-30 ish. um and I put in the guide 50-50. I don't know, that's just the way I was taught, and it bothers me to this day. It bothers me I put that information out there. It's not wrong, it is objectively worse in several ways, but it's definitely out of date, and I kind of had to humble myself a little bit for that.
Well, I think being
um
able to admit mistakes shows more about an individual than an instructor or a leader that has never made any mistakes in their life, so they say. Um, I always seek out people that it's not a one way street of this is how you're going to learn and this is how I'm going to teach it. I very much benefit from a two-way street
Mm-hmm.
of okay, so you do it this way. Well, why do you do it this way? And not to keep bringing coaching soccer into it, that's where I learned that. It was my initial reaction if a player didn't make a run, for example, in soccer, would be like, hey, you're supposed to make that run. Why didn't you make that run? As opposed to, hey, what did you see out there? Because you're out there doing it. I'm on the sideline. What's going on? And maybe it's a valid reason. Hey, coach, I saw them dropping back here and I wanted to check to the ball. So, you could pass it to me and then I can make a run off them. Okay, that's great. I'm glad I asked you. As opposed to the initial reaction of, hey, no, that's wrong. And I feel like that is where a lot of people, I don't want to say a lot, that's generalizing. I feel like that's where some leaders or instructors fail. It is, I told you to do this, so why are you doing this? But I don't actually want to know why. I'm saying, why did you do this? To make you question yourself and to do it my way the next time, as opposed to this could be a teaching point, or maybe you did something for a very good reason and I just don't know that reason. I think that translates into the
Yeah.
gun world as well. And it's something that we're starting, I think, to see get rightfully questioned and called out.
Yeah, and when you ask a question as opposed to offer correction right off the bat, you have the opportunity to not only learn yourself, but you gather more information on how to coach that person further. As opposed to my perspective is that you messed up. That may be true. That person may have made a mistake. And this concept applies to, I'm not a businessman, but leading people in general. If you see someone make a mistake or what you perceive to be a mistake, by asking them, hey, give me a little more information on why you made that call, even if it is a failure on their part, you now have more information to give them because you understand where they were coming from. And yeah, I don't know. That's a good reminder for not just, that can be applied to relationships as well, but as opposed to leading that conversation with correction, which may be necessary, you're instead starting with, hey, tell me more. Because I saw something, but what do you got?
Yeah, and
It's a cool
I
perspective.
mean, I encourage anybody to work with kids in a position where you're supposed to teach them something because that is where I learned the most. It's frustrating, but
Mm.
if you can look internally before
Yeah.
looking outwardly, it can be there's so much growth, I think, with working with kids in a position where it's your responsibility to make them better at something. And
Hmm.
I've learned things from like working with 6 and 7 year olds on a soccer field that translated into what I do now and how I work with my squad as a squad leader, or a team leader, or just in general. And it's
Yeah.
really funny. It's funny to think that that is where I've probably developed the most as a leader, and not and not as my position in the military. That, oh, you get ranked now. Here's your, this is what you do. It doesn't matter if you're good or bad, this is what you do. Um,
Yeah, I can't remember who it was that said it first, but there's a saying that whenever I'm trying to share information, whether it's in person or on social media, someone wiser than me said, if you can't explain it to a 5-year-old, you don't know the concept well enough. And gosh, that could apply to
yeah.
why are there stars in the sky? Or why did I miss the target? If you're trying to give the answer to someone and you can only give it to them in a incredibly detailed, hard to understand, it may be the correct answer, but it is so difficult to comprehend to the layman or to a 5-year-old, that information is probably not going to be translated well enough. And it demos that you probably don't know the concept well enough either. And that's caused me to, make videos in my garage or hit the range and try to share information. I'll get home and I'll check the video and I'll be like, oh, no, this is way too complex. I am not posting that. I need to figure out more of this myself so that I can express it in a 30-second clip to where anyone who comes
I
across
was
this
I
can
was just going to
understand it.
ask you about that. Have you ever actually posted something because you were confident in it? And I'm not talking about the people that are like, no, fuck you, dude, you don't know what you're talking about, like offering like useless criticism. Have you ever like thought you were an expert in something, thought you could present it in a good way, and then you post something and then you look back and you're like, oh no, like I shouldn't have posted that. I shouldn't have said these things.
Absolutely. No question. I mean, I can think about very specific situations where, I would make a comment or a post about, I don't know. Okay, well, here's one. Right when I was first getting into guns, I had just turned 21. I guess I'd been into guns for a little while, but I had just turned 21, got my concealed carry license on my birthday. I'd already purchased a pistol, through the family, like everyone does. Had a holster ordered, and it was an appendix holster, and I was sure that you had to carry your pistol mag with bullets facing backwards. At the, at the end of the day, you know, what's the big deal? But I made multiple posts. I will not hear any other argument. I'm going to validate that this is the way to do it. And here's why, and here's how your hand turns, and here's what happens. And okay, I had my opinion, and I was unwilling to hear any other conversation until one of my best friends was like, dude, it doesn't matter what you think. You just need to listen to other people. And that is one of many situations where I had to painfully learn you may be sure of this, but that doesn't mean that that is the correct answer for everybody. And ultimately, I learned okay, there's pros and cons to everything, but I actually want to turn my pistol mag the other way as I carry a gun for various reasons. But that pertains to do I transition from rifle to pistol? When you're coming around a corner, do you swap shoulders and shoot offhand, or do you stay on your primary side and all the way through? Anyone who's learning like CQB, do you always button hook or do you cross the threshold? It's like there is not a certain perfect answer for 100% of everybody. And just because you have your opinion, that does not validate that that is the answer for everyone. So, yeah, over the years, I've had to learn to humble a lot of my posts to where, pretty much everything is prefaced with, this works really well for me. You should give it a try. And I only ever learned that because, yeah, a post has been up for a year and I've looked back and been like, oh, that was horrible. I should not have phrased that way. Or, yeah,
It's
many times.
very, luckily, I say luckily, our account has been deleted so many times that all of that cringe stuff that I know about, that maybe only however many people interact or saw that post at the time will ever know about, man, I will look back on some things and I still cringe on myself. Um, and
Yeah.
was it Drew or was it Brandon that we were talking to? He made a good point. He's like, if you're not cringing at what you were doing like 10 years ago, that means you didn't grow as a person. I can't remember if
Hmm.
that was Drew or Brandon that said
Oh
that to
yeah.
us,
Oh my god.
but it made me think. It made me think.
That's
I'm
a good
like,
point.
and maybe obviously that's like the feel good thing. Like, oh yeah, I'm cringing, so that means I grew as a person. But I try and do my best to always step out of my own personal bias when reflecting on myself, which is not something I've mastered.
Hmm.
Um, but I look in how I would present things, and I'm like, man, like that is the wrong way to do it. If I could go back and tell, like, pass me anything, it would be like, hey, learn how to communicate better because you're really bad at it and you think you're really good at it. And that is a really bad combination to be overly confident in something that you're
Yeah,
not
yeah.
actually good at.
Well, and beyond that, going back to the whole who do you surround yourself with? If you're surrounded by people who will nitpick who you used to be or nitpick the opinions that you had, I mean, joking with one another is healthy in its own way, but um, you have to be able to find people who will still, I don't know, accept you and encourage you through, yep, you made some mistakes and you're a better man for it today. Let's move forward and keep resolving issues. Yeah, you got to be able to look at yourself and solve problems, but we also still become the people that we spend time with. And if you are around cringe people that continually pull you down to cringe, yeah, you may not ever come out of that. So if you find that, man, I've been in the same friend group or I've been in the same industry and community and I've just been stuck here and those people led me to cringe years ago, you may need to find a community that is able to pull you out of the
Yeah,
cringe.
surrounding yourself with people that are not only able to be honest with you in a way that you respect, but are also pursuing things on their own, that are successful in their own means and constantly pushing themselves, is only going to enable you and motivate you to start doing those things too. As I said before, I'm not looking down on any of my friends that I've had, um, you know, 10 years ago growing up in high school. I'll share a short story. A couple months ago, I found out that one of my best friends from like middle school until we graduated high school together moved out to Colorado, and he was only a couple hours from me. So I
Hmm.
texted him like, "Hey man, you want to go to a soccer game together?" Like we hadn't talked in probably 8 to 10 years at this point, because I'm a season ticket holder at the Rapids, and he's like, "Yeah, dude, let's go." And we go and we meet up, and you know, he's wearing the same clothes that we wore in high school. He still smells like weed, like he did in high school. And I'm not saying smoking weed is necessarily a bad thing. I asked him what he's doing. He still has the same job he had in high school, working for cell phone companies. Not even like a manager, just like selling phones, being a floor man. And even like his opinions on like politics and relationships were all still the same. And I'm like, dude, like we're 10 years older than we were in high school now, and you haven't grown at all.
Yeah.
And that's not to knock the dude. He's a good person. Like he is a nice, genuine person. And I don't want to sound like I'm shitting on him. But just in those 2 hours where we were at a soccer game together, I'm like, yeah, I mean, like it was cool to catch up and everything, but I don't think we're going to do this again. Like I didn't say that to
Yeah.
him, but
Yeah.
in my head, I'm like, yeah, like if I surround myself with this again, I'm going to just become the high school version of myself, and that's not who you want to
Right.
be. So, surrounding yourself with those people is incredibly important. Incredibly important. It seems like you're doing that over at T.REX. You got a bunch of people that work for a company, but one thing I've noticed with T.REX, it's all individuals working for a company, and it's not just a company with a bunch of people.
Yeah, you want to know one interesting character trait that pretty much everyone at T.REX has. I mean, I don't know everyone personally. I can't speak to that. Their company's nearing 100 employees, so I only know so many people personally. But piggybacking on what you just said, to take the question further, who am I surrounding myself with in order to grow and be a better man tomorrow than I am today? At some point, you're going to ask yourself, what am I doing to make the people that I'm around a better person tomorrow as well? Because if you're just a person who is trying to piggyback on other people's successes or habits or growth opportunities, that's good of you to try to find a better community. But you can only ever control
You have to
yourself.
contribute.
Period. So what are you doing to better your community, the people that you're around, your own individual family? And it starts with just being a better person all on your own. And it's not easy to do at all, but I mean that's where it all
Yeah,
kicks
and I
off.
think the people, if you're around the right people, they won't let you be a freeloader. They'll help you out. You all help each other out.
Right.
But if you're around the right people, it's never going to be, yeah, I can get away with not doing something and still be successful just because everybody around me is. I think situations like that
Right.
certainly exist, but if and that's kind of what I love about our little team. To bring it back to ourselves, it's Nathan is very much his own person doing his own thing. He is now a successful full-time illustrator who that's what he does, and it's not just a Seaburn thing. It is full-time. He is
Yeah,
doing
that
what he
is
wants to
nice.
do. Um, our production manager, sure, he
Yeah.
does stuff with us, but he is also doing photography and pursuing becoming a videographer, which is only going to benefit us. But everybody is very much pursuing their own endeavors, and it all contributes back to this passion project that we have. And it is just, I'm very grateful that we are able to, selfishly, I'm able to surround myself with the people that I have just a part of this page, and it's only helped me grow as a person. And it sounds like you have the exact same thing going for you with T.REX Arms. So that's awesome to have.
That's a pretty fun ride to be on, that's for sure. Yeah, it's been a crazy adventure. It's only been 1 year of being at T.REX, but there's a lot more good to come, and I'm just happy to be
Well,
here.
I mean, we appreciate you coming on and chatting with us. It's been an awesome 2 hours. Yeah, no, I really appreciate chatting with you. It's been
This
fun.
has been really good.
Absolutely, you guys. Thank
Yeah,
you for
we're
hosting
gonna have
me.
to do more at some point. Oh man, anytime.
Awesome.
And here comes my whole dog. They hear that I'm ending the podcast. Athena,
I
relax.
love it.
Yeah,
She's doing a lot better. Athena, please.
how's she doing anyway?
Um, please take the time, talk
That's good.
about yourself, what you got going on, where people can find you if they haven't found you already.
Yeah, I'm on Instagram. My handle is Josh Lowry _95. Um, if you have any questions, go ahead and reach out. It seems like I am my own customer service as well. I answer a lot of
Yeah.
arbitrary questions, which I love. I love connecting with new people. Social media is not necessarily my passion, but firearms and the gun industry and growing the future freedom culture is really what I'm all about. Um, please, yeah, hit me up if you guys do have any questions. And thank you guys again for hosting. I've really enjoyed the conversation.
Oh man, don't worry about it. It's a pleasure to have you, and I'm sure we'll do something again at some point. Before we let you go,
Oh, yeah. Part of our deal with our sponsor, AWS, all of our guests get a free belt. But we find that sometimes people have way too much gear. so they don't really need it. So don't feel obliged to take a belt. It is a very much like no obligation here. Have this belt. Thank you for coming on type deal. So when this episode comes out, you should be hearing from AWS, and they should reach out and offer you a belt. And yeah, big thank you to them for enabling us to continue doing what we're doing.
No, huge thank you for Advanced Warfighting Solutions. They're pretty cool. I like my belt. I like
They
my
do.
plate carrier. I like my bag. They kind of spoiled us with the last package. So huge shout out to them.
What I love about them, I ran their stuff long before they even knew who I was. So having them as a sponsor is like makes me feel good as a person. I'm like, yeah, like I had their stuff for like, years before, and I've used it a lot, and they're good people over there as well. So
That's perfect. That's how it should be. Yeah, running the gear before it's ever
yeah, you'd
provided
be
to you. That's
surprised.
awesome.
Yeah. Here's mine with all the T.REX shit on it.
I
You'd be
love it.
surprised how
Glad to
much
see
of a
it.
deal breaker that is to a lot of companies who are like, hey, can you, talk about our stuff? And we're like, I've never ran your stuff. And they're like, yeah, but can you talk about it? And I'm like, I mean, I'm not asking you for free stuff, but if you want us to talk about it, I would like to have run the stuff before. And then it's kind of like, can we pay you more money so you can talk about our stuff? And it's like, no.
Golly.
No, thank you.
Yep.
It's you only get one reputation, and like if I don't want to go out there and like push Olight or push. Oh
Olight
shit! I
sucks.
didn't censor that. Fuck it. Fuck them. Yeah, I don't want to go out and shill plates that I don't use, or God forbid steal, or a light that'll explode if you put in your mouth.
I know we kind of already closed it out, but now I have a question for you. Being you work for T.REX, can companies still approach you and be like, hey, like, can you, like, I don't know, can you test this for us, or like try it out, or can you talk about this stuff? Or is it very much like, no, this is what I do now, and I kind of already have access to all of these things, and if I liked it, I would have already talked about it?
No, good question. That's something that, well, Lucas and the whole T.REX company does a really good job of just giving us freedom to do. I mean, morally, we obviously need to disclose. Are you sending this product to T.REX and you're hoping to see it in media? Because that's very different. And some companies have reached out to me in the last year and been like, hey, can I send you this stuff? And I'll say, you're welcome to, but I am not in charge of what we are filming and creating content on. And they'll just ghost me. Their whole goal is to just get free marketing through T.REX Arms. And that is a very quick, nope, I wouldn't want to run your stuff anyway if that's your goal. But if there are companies that are interested in getting feedback, Drew and I, we hike on our own time. We hike before work. I go shoot on my own time on the weekends. I dry fire in my garage because I have a passion for this stuff. And there are companies that have said, please don't post about this. We just want your feedback. And I'm running some specific gear that not really supposed to talk about. And other companies that, they want feedback and they don't care if I post about it. They would like some media. But yes, to answer the question, companies can absolutely reach out. Sometimes, there's a little catch to it, like, are you wanting free media? Are you wanting me to post a certain amount? And all of that has to be disclosed and clarified as well. But yeah, companies can totally reach out and start that conversation.
And I hate having those conversations. So it's very much,
it can be, yeah.
We try and make it as personable as possible, because if I don't like the people running the company, I could care less about the product. I'm not going to talk about it just because I don't agree with the company. So that's something we have a lot of.
Talk.
I have a process. It's kind of something that I handle with one other person part of the team, and that's kind of our area of responsibility. And it is my least favorite part. of all this. But we have great sponsors. We have a great vetting process for it. So it is very genuine and deliberate when we do it, because we very much understand that if you sell out once and people know about it, not only is it morally wrong, but then anything you say after that is going to have that asterisk next to it. And no amount of money is worth people being just questioning. People should question our guides, but just be like, those people are illegitimate and nothing that they have to say is important, because we host other people who are have very good information. So that's something that we try and uphold. And it's a weird, it made me realize how disingenuous the community can be when it comes to that stuff. And it turned me off to it. So I was just curious. On your end what that's like. But yeah, thank you for coming on. Dad advice. You got to give it to us, even though you're not a dad. Just, yeah.
Yes.
Oh, sheesh. Oh my goodness. Okay, flying by the seat of my pants. Usually the hardest answer to the question is the correct one. And that could be, should I wake up early and go for a run tomorrow morning? That could be, should I save a bunch of money and, I don't know, put it in a future savings situation? Should I take the job that's a long way away from family and it's going to take a lot of effort to move and go somewhere else? Should I tell the person that I'm in a relationship with the truth, whatever the truth is? Usually the harder answer, the most difficult thing to do, usually, not always, but usually that's the right answer. So if you're stuck with something, do I move? Do I tell the person? Do I make that call? If it's the harder thing to do, chances are it's
that
the
a
right
lot.
one.
Great advice. Thanks everybody for listening.
Me too.
Bye.